Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our lunchtime webinar. We are delighted to be joined by Mike James, the Endurance Physio, who will be presenting on Rethinking Rehab, the 3 biggest mistakes therapists make with exercise prescription. So it's been a popular session, so we're very much looking forward to it. For those who don't know physically, we are a medical technology company working to support MSK rehabilitation solutions. We also provide regular education and training through our academy platform. So the format of today, we will be doing a short presentation from Mike, followed by a Q&A. So for those who have joined live, please feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A tab, and we'll hopefully get around to those at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Mike for an introduction and then onto the presentation.
Real. Thanks, Katie, and thanks to the wider PhysiQuip team. Always delighted to collaborate with people and share some knowledge. So my background is a long time ago, in a different century. I entered the world of personal training. I then spent the best part of 2 decades in the military working in exercise prescription, physical training, physical rehab, exercise rehab. Along the way, I picked up a couple of degrees in sports science, in exercise science, and then in strength conditioning. And then my rehab journey took a big swing to one way where I became a sports rehabber and then a physiotherapist. And ultimately, my bread and butter, my sort of foundational skill has always been exercise and exercise prescription. Now, currently, I run a practice back home in Wales where I work almost exclusively with athletes in a rehab or a performance capacity. And I lecture Monday to Friday in university teaching physiotherapy, which again, all of the modules I tend to treat will be more exercise and movement type based things based on just my skill set. So that's me, that's my background. And I guess that's probably the best way I introduce myself, is that whichever form or facet of rehab and healthcare that I've ever dipped my toe in, my underpinning skill set has always been that of exercise. So over the years, as much as I've given very specific condition-based educational pieces, a lot of the time these days, as I push my 50th birthday not too far around the corner, it's very much more stepping back and thinking about the bigger picture. What things do we get wrong? What things do we need to rethink? And I guess a lot of it is from the teaching and the working I've done with other therapists. But I don't think it's wrong to admit that a lot of this is learning from my own errors over the years. I've made enough mistakes to try and hopefully save people making the same mistakes as they move forward. So I've titled it the 3 biggest mistakes therapists make with exercise prescription. There's obviously more than 3. Other people would interpret a different 3 as their big 3, but they're 10,000-foot view, big picture thinking type concepts that will expand on within the remit of what we've got available time. But as always happy to expand in further offline or potentially collaborate again in the future and expand on some of these even more. So I think even as an introduction, before we get to the 3 big things, the thing I always see from therapists is that we think there's some magic trick to exercise prescription. We think that almost that we need to learn every single exercise that we can, that we need to almost stockpile more advanced things all the time to be more specialist. And hopefully what you'll see from the 3 topics that we talk about is the overarching takeaway from today is, let's stop trying to be really basic at the world-class things, and let's become world-class at the basics. Let's go right back to the fundamentals that we should be thinking of when it comes to prescribing exercise, and we'll probably find that we go in the right direction. And why I talk about this as a subject is because of this. There's a situation that always happens, and we do it intuitively or sometimes deliberately, where we think that all of the onus on exercise and rehab is on the patient. We think that if it's not going right, it's basically the patient's fault. We play this blame game where we say lines like, patient failed to comply with rehab, patient didn't adhere to the plan, patient didn't sort of commit to the program. And that's a bit of a lazy way. Of course, there's patients sometimes who don't engage, but I think what we need to do is turn the lens backwards on ourselves and go, well, what could I have been better at? What did I maybe contribute to this going wrong? So the whole topic deals with self-reflection and thinking of it as, how can we help someone do exercise better rather than what can we do? Although there's a flip side to that. If we're doing what we're trying to do better, they'll probably do their part more. So let's zoom in a little bit and look at our biggest mistakes. So the first one, I'm just going to entitle the planning and prescription. So this is the things we do before we actually get someone to start their rehab. I'll give you a little scenario once where, and I know time constraints are a big deal for most people. So there's external factors at play. But I remember starting a new job. I was quite a young new therapist at the time. And I walked into this clinic, and the senior therapist at the time in the place was furiously typing and printing stuff out and photocopying, looking like a really sort of little busy bee, getting all his stuff ready. And I just interestingly said, oh, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm printing off my rehab plans for my patients today. And I was thinking, well, how do you know what they need? And I said, oh, are these existing patients that you're progressing still thinking you still don't know what they need? You might have an idea or a hypothesis of what they need, but there's no way you can know what they need before you've even seen them. And to my alarm, he sort of went, no, it's a brand new patient day today. So I said, so how do you know what these guys need? Well, from the referral letter from the doctors. And I was like, but some of them are 12 weeks old. Some of them, you don't know the doctors. You don't know what their background is. You can't trust perhaps the information they put on there. But he was trying to survive the day. He was trying to give them something. It might not have been perfect. It was trying to be perfect, but it was laden with lots of mistakes, like not enough explanation, too complicated, too many exercises, lots of the fundamental things that with best intentions, it went slightly wrong. But more largely, when we're talking about it, what I want us to think of is stepping away from trying to build this encyclopedic knowledge of exercise. I learn every exercise and every progression of every exercise I can. And once I've got that done, I can just pick from this wonderful arsenal of exercises I have. And then you almost confuse yourself. You get paralyzed by analysis of the amount of choices you've got. The thing, and I used to do this was certainly one of my mistakes, but the thing that I've learned is there's no real encyclopedia. And even if there was, by the time you master this encyclopedia, you've probably retired, or the first 500 pages of the encyclopedia are now redundant anyway. So what we really need to try and do is flip it around. When we're trying to learn that encyclopedic knowledge of exercise, our normal thinking process is, how do I treat an Achilles tendon? How do I treat shoulder pain? How do I treat low back pain? You think of the body part or the injury, and you try to learn how to rehab that. It's not a bad place to start. It gives us a template and some sort of format to follow. But over time, what I've always stepped back to is going, well, actually, if I learn about the person, I learn about Steve, who's got the knee pain, or Claire, who's got the back pain. What do they need? What do their lives look like? How much time can they really commit to it a week? Because if I think I've written this perfect 30-minute program, 30 minutes every day, and it's perfect, but I've either missed or not asked them saying, well, actually, I'm a working mum. I got 2 kids. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, I can do nothing. And the rest of the week, 5 minutes a day is probably the maximum I can offer. I need to write them a 5-minute plan that's done 3 times a week. There's no point me asking, because the most committed athlete won't be able to do it. It's the exact same psychology why most of us go on weight loss programs in the new year and we've stopped them by Jan, because we go for too much, too soon, too quick. It's even us as therapists and professionals sometimes, in the absence of pain, we'll try to get fit, or we'll try to do some other sort of cessation of something else, or start of some other habit and activity. And we just make it unrealistic. So if we understand the person first, then the patient second. So this is Steve. This is about Steve's life. Now let's find out about Steve's knee. We can better plan and prepare what that person needs versus what we think they need, or what we've given the last Steve or the last Dave or the last Tracy with their exercises for their same injury. So yes, 10 Achilles tendon pains might all have a similar formatted plan, But what it shouldn't be is the same plan. There's no way those people should be trying to do the same plan. You have to adapt your approach person by person. And then once we've got that person, what we really need to start doing is assessing them, reassessing them, and learning from what we're finding. I think when we do an assessment, a lot of us do it as a tick box exercise. I have to fill these boxes in case my notes get audited, or in case someone wants to see their notes sometime in the future and they want to see what I've written. What we often don't do is think about what we're doing as much as we should. So I've always been brought up to think of it as every test can be an exercise, every exercise can be a test. So if I'm doing something like, let's say I've got an Achilles problem and I've got them doing a calf raise, let's see how many calf raises they can do now slowly. Why can't that suddenly become the exercise? I bought myself a bit of time in that planning and preparation. They're finding it hard. I've also got a baseline measure, and now there's my exercise plan. I don't need now to make some 5 or 6 fancy other calf alternatives when I've already got one that they know how to do it. I've shown them it, and I've bought myself some time. Time always being the first excuse of therapists. I'd have done more if I had more time. Let's use the time we've already got a little bit better, perhaps. And then when they come back in, let's retest. I've worked with therapists over the years where, Mike, what should I do with this patient? I'm 6 weeks in. What's the next sort of exercise they need? So where were they when they did this many on this leg and it was this level of pain? Okay, where are they now? Oh, I don't know. I haven't retested them. They have got a line in the sand at the start without periodic measurement to reassess them. Some of it can be really scientific. You've got fantastic people like PhysiQuip who offer fantastic equipment that can give you very scientific, data-driven analysis, which will be perfect for some. But a lot of the time, if you've got an absence of those type of equipment, you can do it with anything, a watch, reps, sets, just your visual eye for quality or whatever it is. You don't need blockers to get in the way to make this objective and data-driven. And within that planning and preparation, then, let's now switch to where we should be thinking today. I studied initially in a time when everything was timescale driven. So on day 6, they should be doing this. On day 10, they should be doing that. By 3 months, it should be this. That can be fantastic for some people, but also it comes with barriers of some people can lose motivation if they think it's going to take 6 months to get somewhere. Some people will see that as a target to try and accelerate. I'm going to do that in 4 months. And we just hamper the process moving forward. If we go off milestones, when you've got 90-degree range at the shoulder, we're going to start introducing this exercise. When you can do 2 minutes of hopping without pain, we're going to return to run. You give them a marker that becomes maybe time-driven in a parameter. So this could take 6 to 12 weeks. If everything goes well, we work really hard, maybe it's more towards the 6. If everything doesn't react how we want it to, maybe it's more towards 12, but we're hoping it's somewhere in the middle. It becomes better for the person to hold themselves accountable and to start realizing that I've got flexibility in the program I'm doing and I'm engaged with it and I'm leading it. And that all still forms part of that planning and preparation phase for us to give them the targets and the milestones to work towards. And then I guess finally, when it comes to planning and preparation, it's this one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach, which I alluded to earlier, that all our Achilles programs get exactly the same rehab. That's patient first, condition first, body part first, not person first. And I think some of the time where we make the mistakes here is we either copy what we've seen others do without understanding it fully. So someone who's senior or more experienced to me or more skilled in a certain injury type does it this way. I'm just going to lift and drop their exercise plan in with my patients without considering the individual. Sometimes, and perhaps this is a modern day mistake, which I see a lot of, I do a lot of second opinion consultative type work now as a primary sort of clinical workload. And people will come to me saying, I've seen this physio and this is the plan they gave me. And when you look at it, they've jumped on somewhere like Instagram or TikTok and they've just lifted someone's exercise video that's got no specificity or reasoning for that person in front of them. And they've given it to them. And it's just unrealistic and not feasible for that person to do. So let's be, we'll chat in some of the points that are coming up in the rest of the talk of how to avoid doing some of that stuff. Now, my second one, and I've not put these in any order of importance. I think each one will have a more important role with different patients than others. But gun to my head, if there's only one of these things to take away, it's this one, okay? We blame those patients for not doing their rehab. We're never at fault. Well, actually, someone's adherence to an exercise plan is absolutely our job. It's our responsibility, not theirs. We'd like people to be engaged, but we can't expect human instinct to be the same for everyone, that they're just going to do it because we tell them it. Because we know that when you look at something with perhaps a wider reaching health implication than musculoskeletal medicine, you think of something like smoking. The best intentioned people who want to give up smoking for health reasons and everything still find it super hard. People who are trying to reduce alcohol intake, drug intake, all those things like that, just because they want to doesn't mean they stick to it. We have to help them engage and adhere to the things we do. And this is the sort of area of study that perhaps in the last 10 years, all of my reading and research and learning has gone into this side of it. I now read books on topics like, I've got a book I've just finished reading, which was by a FBI hostage negotiator, which was about dealing with conflict, about trying to body language and non-verbal cues to mirror that person to try and help some of this behavioral change, rather than just me going, well, I'm the best at exercise. Here's my gold standard exercises, just do them. I have to meet the person in the middle and try and help. So when you're prescribing exercise, the thing that should be at the forefront of our mind is this, is my program sticky? Is it written in a way that they're going to do it? If it's not, you're probably going to fail straight away. And more importantly, they're going to fail straight away. So how do I make my plan sticky? And that's when when I'm meeting the people, assessing them, when I'm writing their exercises, when I'm reviewing their exercises. I do a lot of mentoring work with other therapists, and they'll say, Mike, can you run an eye over this exercise plan I've given someone? What do you think about it? That's my first thought in my brain is this sticky enough for this person to do the exercises? And when we look at some of the research out there, and it's too deep to go down a rabbit hole on today, but I'll signpost you to some good resources. If you look at the right-hand arrow, the sort of target there, this is what most of us do. I certainly used to do this. I'm trying to learn that encyclopedia. I'm looking at Instagram and social media to become more advanced in the exercises that I give. Now I've got all of these weapons and these arrows, but I'm missing the target because I don't know how to use them, or I'm using them wrongly. But if I turn my eye and I stop, I draw a line in the sand, I'm not trying to learn more exercises or be sexier with my exercises. What I actually want to do is understand the best way to get someone to do them. What's going to stop someone doing this and what's going to help them do it? I need less arrows and I've got a more successful chance of hitting the target. And we've got a couple of seminal pieces of open access work. All of these are free for you to look at. And we can get the links sent on to you later on as well. So this is by Babatunde et al., where they did a sort of systematic review of what things help patients in musculoskeletal practice, in physiotherapy specifically, do exercises or not do their home exercises. And why this is a really great piece of work is they actually give us some really nice tips and resources to use. And they split the barriers down into barriers and facilitators. So barriers are the things that are going to stop someone doing their exercises. Facilitators, something that's going to let them do them, increase their adherence. And they broke them down really into three sort of formats. There's the things the therapist does, the things the system of healthcare does, and then the things the patients do. So of course, when it comes to patients, we can look individually at the person and think about some of the things that their biopsychosocial approach may affect. But you look at some of the other stuff from the therapist, okay? The attitude. It's not the therapist's responsibility. We give them too much information. We're resistant to change in our practice. Perhaps we don't have great knowledge of these things that help people do or don't do their exercises. They're all things we can change really easily. There's nothing there that's fundamentally hard. If we look at the healthcare system, then yes, there's sometimes barriers there that's less easy to change. about things like time availability, equipment availability, those sort of things. But we can certainly make a dent into some of those. And what they've done at this study, which was really nice, is they've come up with this acronym of simple tips. And these simple tips are almost like a step-by-step guide for us to start to use. And I certainly used to use this to the point that now it's become a little bit more intuitive and natural for me to not have to go through my checklist. But things like the S, simplify the regime. If you limit exercise prescription to a minimum of 2 to 5 exercises, you're absolutely going to improve someone's adherence to those exercises. If you start giving exercises that match the things patients want to do. So this isn't my emotionally attached exercise. This is the one you think you're going to do more than I am. So even if in a hierarchical, evidence-based approach, we know there's 3 exercises for a certain condition, and one is the gold standard, and the other 2 are sort of silver, bronze standard. If someone is saying, I'll do the silver standard, but I haven't got the facilities, time, or effort, or confidence to do the gold standard, silver's enough. That's where we need to be trying to be very patient second and person first. And you can follow through this yourselves when you read it. But it just starts to look at other factors and help us move forward. The second S, the last one of tips, setting goals. Most of us understand the terms like SMART goals and adapting goals, but I don't know how much we actively practice it patient to patient. We sort of, again, it's a little bit in your planning phase of your notes where, what's your goals? Or to do this 3 times a week or that, but how much actual time do we spend trying to work on these things? So that first piece of research by Babatunde et al. Is brilliant. It was a real eye-opener for me. It's been a piece of work that's been quite a nice sort of compass almost to the little other things I want to go and expand my knowledge on. And perhaps the thing I've started using more of, the 2 things that I'm perhaps more aware of than I used to be, biases. Okay, we do all have biases, both us and patients. And I think it's really important to, biases aren't evil, but we need to acknowledge we have them and then try to address them. So I would always be, because, my background, particularly my military days, you could make people do exercise, but you also had a population of people who would never not do exercise. So when I stepped away from elite sport and the military and I'm working with everyday people, and some of those don't do, I can't be bothered to do my exercise, even though I'm complaining I can't lift my kids up or play in the garden with my kids. My biases lead me to go, what the hell? I have to park that bias up and understand that's not going to help me address this person's problems. And then the T of technology. I think even by default, we're having this chat online today. There is a ton of tools that will help us and the patients, but we have to be careful how we use them. So there are some fantastic exercise prescription software apps out there now, and people can put all these glossy, glamorous exercise videos and explainers. But I think sometimes we make the same mistakes. We used to write and draw matchstick men and women figures and write out what we needed someone to do. But we can overdose someone's information and overload them with what we need them to do by just getting carried away with some of these technologies. Most of my patients that I see in person now, I get their phone, I film them doing the exercise as I'm narrating the exercise, or I'm doing it and talking it through it, and they've got it on their phone. I'm just using technology to take away a barrier. Or I've lost my sheets, or I couldn't remember what you meant by that one. It's always there for them to just access and take a barrier away. So really useful study. The second one then is it was done up in Sheffield in the UK by Jack et al. And these looked exclusively at a big systematic review on the barriers to treatment. Now, rather than offering us tangible takeaways like Babatunde did, what these do is open our eyes to some of the wider problems we need to be thinking of. And they categorically state that adherence to exercise has to consider things like not just the physical, but someone's social, economic, psychological status, the time and the support they've got available. So we need to explore these things when we assess people. When we're writing someone's exercise prescription, we need to think of these things that might affect what someone does or how much they can do and what way they do it. So again, another open access piece of paper that's really worth your time because it allows us, the 2 of those, but particularly the second one, allow us to explore the bigger picture. What is going on with this person's life? Learn about the person, because the exercise bits just become easier. And it's a tough transition for us initially. It's hard. We want to instinctively just go back to doing stuff and giving things. But sometimes we just need to step back a little bit and go, okay, cool. Think bigger picture. It's more important. Now, when it comes to that adherence side of it, there's a couple of top tips that I tend to give as just bullet points. Okay. I'm a big fan of rehab diaries and check-ins to give someone an exercise. This, I think, where the blame game starts. Katie comes to see me with an injury. I give her what I think is this gold standard program. She leaves and I go, brilliant. She's going to be back in a month. She's going to be perfect. But Katie comes back in a month and says, yeah, I haven't done it. And now I start the blame game. But then I sit there and think, well, I never once checked if she had any questions. I never once checked in if she needed any help. Never once checked in to see if she now suddenly had lost the exercises or didn't understand them. What if the one that she did in clinic was now painful? What if she hadn't fully understood how I wanted her to progress it? So a lot of my work these days is this real close monitoring. Most of my patients, and of course, this isn't standard. People don't need to do this. People like barriers sometimes and distance between the patients and themselves. But I tend to give all my patients my phone number. They all have my email. I sometimes have formal catch-ups. So even if it's someone I see in person, I'll have a virtual catch-up. It could be a quick phone call, a text. It could be a video call, anything that I need to do to make sure I'm facilitating them doing the things I need them to do. Sometimes it's because they've done so well with it, you can progress them quicker than you wanted to, based off those milestones, not timescales. Or things aren't going as well, and I can now nip in and edit and amend things much quicker than waiting a month to 6 weeks to see them again. I make sure I factor in an ability or a time for them to tell me any concerns. And I don't just dismiss them. I really listen to what their concerns are and, go against my biases sometimes and change some of the things that are there. But the number one thing I do to make sure that these people adhere is I make sure that if I look at the exercise plan someone's got, whether it's something I did or someone else has done, can I justify every exercise that's on that sheet? And if I can't, that exercise is gone. Because ultimately, I'm trying to keep it down to 1, 2, or 3 exercises max. If something new is going in, something else has to come out. Or I tweak the exercises that I've got, which I'll come on to more later. But what's the why? If it's not there, if you can't justify why it's there, get it gone. The number one mistake I always see when I look at other therapists' exercise plans is normally that, let's say that in the first session, they give someone 4 exercises. Perfect, fine, works well. When someone comes back, they've suddenly given them another one or another 2, or they've added a few more on. Now this person's got like 7 exercises to do. Why do we need to keep adding on? Why do we need to change it? And you'll speak to some and you'll go, well, they're paying me, so I feel obliged to give them something extra, something new, or change something. Trust yourself. Let them trust you that they're still doing the right stuff. It's working. You're just progressing it through normal exercise progression principles. And then try to step back. By all means, use social media for a little bit of inspiration or variety, but don't steal someone else's plan that's for a different person, or a lot of the time, fictitious. So I do a lot of montage videos as suggestions to people online. None of them have ever been the actual plan I give someone. It's like, here's 6 to 9 exercises that would work for this condition. Interpret it as you would or want to after that. So by reducing the exercises, it makes you have to find out what the biggest payout ones are. What's your biggest bang for your buck ones? If I can do the same thing in 1 exercise than 2, why am I giving them 2? That maximizes the efficiency of the plan, reduces the commitment from the person. And I try to support it with these simple feedback mechanisms of videos or verbal feedback. And then those exercises are for the person and not me. They're not the things I think someone should be doing some of the time. Often it's a collaboration. And of course, you'll get some patients who go, well, because I often say, well, which ones of those do you feel work best? Well, I'm not here for that. Mike, you're the expert. You tell me what I need to do. And sometimes they won't move on until you do. But largely, I try to let them choose options. A bit like with my kids, I don't mind which of these two you have, because they're both the lesser of some of the evils you could have. I'm going to trick you to making you think it's your decision, but ultimately I don't mind which one you have. So if my kid wants a packet of crisps or a bar of chocolate, and I just want them to have fruit, they can choose whether they want strawberries or apples. I don't care. They think they're in control. But going back to that behavioral science and that sort of FBI profiling type stuff, I've let them think they're in control and make that decision. And this is a nice piece of work, which is a powerful sort of statement. If you give 1 to 3 exercises versus 6 or more in someone's home exercise program, the likelihood is that you'll have twice the adherence commitment as if you give them 6 or more. So half the exercises for twice the compliance feels like a bit of a no-brainer. But it takes a mental shift and a thinking shift from therapists to give less exercises, and that's quite hard. But I'll show you how you can do that with this one. Okay, so my final point. So plan and prepare better. Really focus on someone's ability, whether through the things we do or the things we try and encourage them to do, to adhere to the exercises. And part of that is to give less exercise. And the way you fix that is to evolve someone's program, not have a revolution. So don't change everything all at once, evolve it. And it doesn't take as much skill or knowledge as you think. So if I've given someone a squat, I don't need to then add in a lunge or a deadlift or a plyometric type exercise just to make them get new things or progress them. In a whistle-stop tour of lots of options, okay, we can tweak the same one lots of ways. And this is a concept that I've always called the phone box rehab. This gives my age up pretty quick, because most people won't know, most youngsters won't have ever come across phone boxes. But when I first started working in rehab, one of my original mentors, one of my sort of role models said to me, Mike, you should be able to rehab anyone in a phone box. And what he meant by that was I manipulate the same exercise in a restricted space by thinking of the principles of exercise rather than always having to change the exercise. And here's some simple ways you can do that, okay? If I make the speed of a movement faster or slower, that's going to fundamentally change how someone benefits the exercise. So if I go much, much slower, add more time and attention, the TUT as you see it, someone can suddenly work far harder with no extra equipment and no change to the exercise. So you can add pauses or holds or just do things explosive. So when you're doing this squat, I want you to go down to halfway and take 5 seconds to get down and 5 seconds to get back up. Or I want you to take 5 seconds to go down, but I want you to power up as fast as you can. We've not changed anything from a 3 sets of 10, 1 second up, 1 second down squat or any other exercise. But we've changed the speed of the movement to fundamentally change the exercise. And that can be all you need sometimes to progress someone's or evolve someone's plan, not change it. You can work someone through different ranges of movement. When you're doing that bicep curl, I want you to go from full repetition, full range, to half reps, 3/4 reps, quarter reps. How hard you're doing it. So I want you to work no harder than 3 out of 10 on a perceived exertion scale. Yeah, that's fine. This is getting quite easy now, Mike. What should I do? Okay, I want you to go to 5 or 6 out of 10. It'll be moderately hard. You might be slightly out of breath, but no more than that. We use visual analog scales really effectively for pain, but we don't use them enough, I think, for exercise and rehab. You might say, right, the 3 sets of these exercises that you do, I want them all to be at 4 out of 10 intensity. You can work out how heavy that is with the resistance bands or equipment that you're using, but that's your parameters. Now they're getting easy. We're sticking to 3 sets of 10, but let's do 1 at 3 out of 10, 1 at 5 out of 10, and 1 at 7 out of 10 effort. And they suddenly then go, that makes sense. I don't need to start doing percentage maximum lifts. I don't need anyone to calculate what these prescriptions are. It's just how hard does it feel? Because we know with things like perceived exertion, we'll have days we're tired, we're dehydrated, we've had a busy day in work. To stick to some intensities, as in prescribed resistance intensities, can be hard. But at 3 out of 10, will always feel like 3 out of 10. They may adjust the resistance levels they're using, but they still feel they're working at 3 out of 10 or whatever the number is. So that's a big one. That's one of my first ones I tend to play with. We can, of course, play with resistance, make things heavier, make things lighter within the available equipment that someone's got. But the pandemic was fantastic for opening people's eyes that you don't need to be going to expensive gyms. You don't need to have fancy technical equipment. If you've got it and you want to use it, great. But maybe put in bags of sand or books or something you've got at home into a rucksack to do your exercises is all you need to progress the resistance level. We can do more or less based on someone's pain and response. So do it every other day, do it every day. Do 3 sets, do 5 sets. Those sort of volume builders. We don't change the exercise. We just change how much we're doing, up or down. We can do it how often we're doing it. So more sets, more days, less days. Sometimes someone might say, you asked me to do these every day, Mike, and that's fine, but I'm really tired by Friday. Okay, what I want you to do is do them every other day. Or you've gone from every other day to every day. Maybe it's, I'm really struggling towards the end of some of my sets. Okay, break them into half sets, mini sets. Don't do a set of 12, do 2 little sets of 6 with a break in the middle. Same exercise, same program, you've just tweaked the way they're doing it so they can do more of them. Rest periods, okay? More or less will fundamentally affect someone's recovery or intensity. You're not changed anything about the plan. You've just been very prescriptive in the way you want them to rest and recover. Sometimes giving them more is to progress them. Sometimes giving them more is because it becomes easier and that's better. Sometimes you shorten the rest period so it becomes harder. I haven't got any more equipment to make it harder. I can't do any more of them. Okay, don't have 30 seconds between exercises, have 10 seconds. Now you're going to get more bang for your buck because you're more tired. Play around with different things, okay? Don't be stuck with set protocols of movement. Let someone play around. I think we can be too serious sometimes in our rehab. The next slide, no, we'll go back to that one. I think sometimes we don't gamify rehab enough. So if you can, I coach a lot of children's football, and I'll give them something like a little skill to practice, something like a keep up. If you can do 20 of these by the next time I see you, I'm going to give you £1 or I'll give you a bar of chocolate or whatever it is. I've made it gamified for them to go away and want to get better. With younger populations, this is fantastic sort of stuff where you really take fun and play and add that into your rehab. We're way too serious normally. Just because someone's injured or in pain doesn't mean things can't be fun and enjoyable for them. How long, how short you do things for. This is the opposite of the rest. This is working periods. That's a really easy thing to manipulate, to change someone's exercise plan. And then I knew I had to put something in somewhere. Make it fun. That's an expansion of the play and explore. What I meant more specifically by this slide was, I'll say to someone, so something like, let's use a squat. It's a good example again. Mike, do I need to go to my legs to 90 degrees? Do I need my bum to go to the floor? Do I need my knees to stay over my toes? What would it play? Try them all. Do the parameters I've set you. Do a couple of sets on single leg. Do a couple on double leg. Do weight in one hand, do weight in both hands. Go all the way to the floor, go halfway to the floor. Play, explore, experiment. And when we catch up next, give me some feedback. They're probably going to go away going, Mike wants me to feedback on this when I see him next. He wants me to tell him which ones work better than others. I probably need to do more of them. So it's more engaging and more committal for them as you go through. But that's more about just making it fun and enjoyable. Last couple, okay. I'm not a big fan of being too prescriptive. I don't often say to someone, you need to do 3 sets of 10 exercises. Because if they get the resistance wrong, or they're tired, or they're really fresh, 8 or 12 suddenly feels like failure. So what I'll often do to someone is I'll say, right, I want you to do 3 to 5 sets. If you're tired, or you've gone a bit too heavy, or your pain has increased, just do 3. If you're feeling great, everything's good, do 5. Now you've got a bit of freedom to do what you want, a bit of ownership. Likewise, do 8 to 12 reps. If you've gone a bit too heavy, you're a bit too tired, you're a bit too painful, and 8's enough, stop there. If you feel great, do 12. You've got ownership and freedom and license to explore. Often I use this principle called reps in reserve. So I'll sort of say 3 sets of 10 plus or minus 2. So if you've gone a bit too hard and you can only do 8, fine. If you've gone too hard, you can only do 6. We need to adjust the weight so you can go back up to a minimum of 8. If you've gone too easy, too light, and you've done 15, you need to put a bit more resistance on because we don't really want to be more than 12. It just gives them ownership to explore and play more than being very prescriptive. And ultimately, remember, with the exercise plan, the best exercise, it's the question I'll get asked most from therapists. What's the best exercise for? Insert condition. The best exercise is whichever one the person does. And that'll change person to person, or the same person within their plan at different times, or the same person at different times of the same injury. I work with a lot of runners, a lot of endurance athletes. Some of those come and see me periodically with flare-ups of the same condition. But based on them and their lives and what's going on, sometimes their different exercises work best at different times. So with that, don't be scared to experiment. Don't be scared to get the patients to experiment. Okay, they can play around and explore. They should have freedom and ownership over your plan. You're still in control of it, but make them feel they're in control of it. We always have to be aware that the rehab road is never straight and true. It's always got kinks and bends and twists and turns. We just have to deal with that. And we have to be reactive and proactive in the way we prescribe exercise. We can't be too rigid. And then finally, ask yourself this question from now on, is if someone doesn't have success with an exercise plan, did they really fail rehab, or did the rehab, ergo us, fail them? More often than not, I think the answer is the second one than the first one. And if you know that the second one was on point and right, and they did fail rehab because of them, then that's just one you chalk off as some people don't comply no matter what we do. Some people don't want to engage in exercise and rehab, and that's fine. But I did everything I could to make sure that they would adhere to it and do it. And that's it. That's a whistle-stop tour. That's normally like an hour talk that I've condensed into probably a bit more than 20. But cool. So I know we had some pre-submitted questions, Katie, didn't we, as well?
Yes, thanks so much, Mike. No, that was fab, really interesting. Yeah, loving the visual slides.
They're prompts for me more than anyone else.
Yeah. So we're gonna start by answering a few pre-submitted questions. So yeah, you might have covered a couple sort of within the slides, but it'll be good to expand on any if we can. And again, for those who are on live, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A section, and we can get round to those. So the first question we had, which we got through, was how do you integrate, prescribe, control exercises in your tele rehab? To what extent do you value the low threshold, for example, to an athlete?
Yeah, brilliant. We did touch on that in the talk that I probably do more tele rehab, virtual rehab than most. I've done it for a while. And certainly it was a challenge at the start. It's hard. And I think that's mainly because we think we have to engage in exercise and rehab in the same way we would in person. Now, I would argue that probably now I do. I do try and do it the same way. But for most people, it's a case of just stepping back a little bit and almost just trying to take some of those principles around less exercise. That's the first thing that makes life easier. Give them less exercises and give them these ranges and parameters to work within them. Here, do this for 2 to 3 weeks. And if you can do this many in week 1, great. This many in week 2, brill. We'll catch up in a few weeks. I mentioned some of the exercise prescription software facilities that are out there. They can be all integrated into telehealth. So a lot of the time you can send people those plans based on what you've done. There's nothing as well, like right now I'm chatting to you from my office at home, but I've also got my garage is converted into like a clinic, like a gym. And often I can set up my work in there, my camera is in there, and I can film videos or demo videos on the plans as I'm showing them live to someone. Every telehealth encounter, this is a real time saver for us as well. Every telehealth encounter that I do is recorded and I send them the recording afterwards. So a lot of the time, the narrative supporting the prescription and the dosage and everything I want, and the demonstration is given. And I'll give them the progressions and regressions live in the video, and then they've got it to watch back. I store all of them in the cloud. So if someone does say, oh, I've lost the recording, Mike, cool, I'll just resend it again, take away that accountability, and offer ownership to them. So I think, although there's a rabbit hole to go down there, if someone was to say, I want to use this software, or I want to do these type of prescriptions, I think as an overview, less is more, and using the available resources is probably the easiest way to just get some sort of prescription of rehab or exercise in telehealth.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, and some good points there about sort of, let's say, recording sessions or actually providing, videos of the exercises following a session as well. Okay, so next question, which you did cover sort of in the session about top tips for adherence to rehab. So yeah, there was quite a few takeaway points there, but anything more to add on that, would you say?
Yeah, no, I think we sort of really we really
Covered that
thrashed
one.
on with the adherence one. Hopefully I wouldn't have any more to add to it, but I
Yeah.
just think it's that person first. If you start to understand the person, then getting them to adhere is much, much easier. And whilst you're learning those things, and even though this will probably stay as a primary thing to consider even after that point, give less exercises is number one. If you the less you give, the more chance you got them to do it. If you're only looking for someone's understanding of which of these three are you likely to do the most. So you might have someone in clinic where you give them 3 exercises, but in your head, you're only going to give them 1 to take away. Which one of those do you find? I would gauge it a couple of ways. Either which one do you find most fun to do? Which one feels like it's hitting the area we're trying to hit the most? Which one's the hardest? Some people, and again, knowing people, there are people who love the hard exercise. That one just doesn't feel like it's working hard enough. I don't want to know it. So which one of those would you like to do? Cool. That's the one I want to do.
Yeah.
Off you go. There's your exercise. So less exercises, and let them choose which one they find the most useful.
Yeah, great. Give them a bit of control as well, which is always good. Okay, so next question, how many exercises do you recommend prescribing in each phase of healing?
Yeah, again, so I did think of answering that one as a staged one, but actually I sort of thought, oh, that's not really reflective of my true approach. It's 1 to 3, 4 max, all the time. So what type of exercise they do, if we were to take, say, like an acute injury, then the type of exercise I give them in those acute stages will be fundamentally different to subacute and chronic or late stage rehab. And they might change in their sort of principles of intensity and in principles of weight bearing status or whatever it might be, return to sport function type things. But I'm never, ever looking to throw more than a couple of exercises in any of those stages. And that whole point I made about if it's in the plan and I can't justify it, it comes out. So I don't exactly work on 1 in, 1 out type of thing,
Yeah.
but it's not a bad strategy sometimes to just go, that's my principles. Like three exercises max, and something has to go. Or if I can't justify something coming out, I can't justify something going in as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. That makes sense. We have just had a live question pop up here. So you mentioned you have 6 to 9 exercises for different conditions. And do you have an app you recommend? Do you have that software essentially as anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone looks on my social medias, it's the Endurance Physio everywhere. I have these little montage things. The app I use is called Pick Play Post, PIC Play Post. It's not the only. I think when I started using them a long time ago, probably wasn't that many around. I know there's other ones around that I'm not overly familiar with because I've just stuck to the ones that work for me. But there's multiple apps now where you can find those sort of facilities where you can just film a 30-second video, ping it on. The one I use, I was saying Pick Play Post. I can do 1 exercise, 2 exercises, 6, 9, whatever. I think 9's the most. But it works really well, and they can all play simultaneously and then just repeat the play. So that's the good one. And as I say, the the evidence of that's on all my social medias if anybody wants to see how they look.
Yeah, perfect. Great, thank you. Okay, just a couple more questions then. So, examples of periodization models that you follow for athletes. A lot seems to be GPP or powerlifting 5-3-1, etc.
Yeah, good question. So I guess you could say that if you looked at the plans I give people, each one will have some sort of familiarity with some type of established model. I've been down the rabbit hole of using all those when I did my strength conditioning degree, everything I tried to use was these really advanced, complicated sort of type of plans. Like most things in my life, the older I've got, I've just stepped back a little bit and made it simple. One of the easiest ones, or two of the easiest ones people can use in day-to-day rehab is things like APRE and DAPRE. So that's the adjustable daily or just weekly adjustable resistance training plans. So you basically will progress things off someone's feedback from what they're doing. APRE or DAPRE is quite a nice one to look at. But if I'm honest, and I think this is why it's quite a nice question to ask, the primary progression model most people should think of is common sense. Literally take a step back, take all of that stuff away, the fluff, and just go, right, what's a sensible way to just make them do a bit more, a bit harder, or a bit heavier, whatever I want for that person? And if that gets to a point where you either think I need more or it's not enough, then start bringing in some of these complex ones. But once you bring a progression model in, it suddenly becomes non-person focused and it becomes systems based, which is fine. But ultimately, perhaps you don't need them as much. The American College of Sports Medicine, them and similar organizations around the world, they still have their national guidelines for things like hypertrophy or muscular endurance and so on, so on. So you can still follow some models and strategies that they would suggest to be pertinent prescriptions for certain goals. But again, I would still take those parameters and tweak them individually for the person.
Yeah. Okay, great. Oh, that's great. So this question is about, obviously you mentioned a lot, Mark, about giving less exercises, adherence, etc. We have someone asking about sort of how to give less exercises, obviously achieving goals without excessive time, obviously spent doing home exercise programs. And again, sort of in my experience working in clinic as well, when, you know, you get patients through and they come through with multiple issues and you're there like, right, okay, where do I start? You need exercise for this, you need exercise for that, you need exercise for that. So I think it's definitely, you know, trying to give less exercises, but then how do we feel as clinicians? Actually, are we actually achieving what is needed when maybe we are faced with a bit of challenge on that side of stuff? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I do. And I think your point's perfect about multiple problems is we have to be comfortable ourselves first, which then gives comfort to the patient that we can't fix everything at once.
Yeah.
So I'm really keen always with multiple sites of injury to sort of go, right, rank them as in the amount of effect they have in your life. Now, for some, they'll base it purely on pain. This is the thing that hurts the most. This is what I want fixed. Others will say, well, actually, my shoulder's worse than my knee, but I really want to run, or I can't walk to work, or I can't do the things I want to. My knee's more important. So spend more time, and you buy this time back by giving less exercises. So it's productive in two ways. Once you delve into what's the, so you're happy that us giving you some stuff for your knee today is fundamentally more important and we'll deal with the shoulder in the future. Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's stick to those parameters. So straight away, you've chopped the potential amount of exercise you've given. Then I go into that process of, okay, tell me about your life, your access to equipment. If someone says to me, for example, that they live in a fifth floor apartment and the elevator's not worked for 6 months, and they work on the third floor of an office block, and stairs is a problem for them, then something primarily that works towards the mechanics of climbing stairs better has to jump to number one in my list. as that might be all we're working on. Whereas when there's multiple things they're trying to get better on, again, okay, so your knee's more important than your shoulder. Of the knee, you said you get a bit of pain when you sit in the car for too long driving. How often do you have to sit in the car? Oh, I have to drive an hour each way every day. Okay, that's quite important for you. I also get a bit of pain when I play golf. How often do you play golf? Or like once a month now and again, and I could take it or leave it. Okay, we'll worry about something for the golf later on. Let's dealing with the prolonged sitting in the car, for example. So you might start with, and it's not a bad process sometimes, you go, okay, if this person was a full-time patient and had all the access to everything, how might my perfect plan look? It's this. Okay, what can I strip away here? What can I throw overboard because the ship's sinking? Okay, they don't need that. Take that out. They don't need that. Now I'm left with 2 or 3 things. And you either reverse engineer it that way, or you just dive straight in and go, what's most, And I've said to some patients sometimes, particularly the ones where they've turned up a bit late, they've talked about, my knee pain. I think it came on because I fell out of a tree when I was 4, but now they're 54, and you're like, oh, we don't really need to be going there. But whatever you're left with limited time at the end of the session, and I'll literally just say to them, okay, I've only got time to give you one exercise to take away today. What do you want that exercise for? And they'll go, boom. Okay, cool. Now, you said you like a leg press. Have you got access to a leg press? No. Okay, so it can't be leg press. What can we do that looks up? What about a squat? Oh, I don't like squats. They're boring. Okay, what if we try different types of squats? Well, maybe. They might say, no, I don't do any squats. So then we sort of just navigate it around. So we end up with them going, I'm happy with that exercise. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, that's how we've got there. So we might spend far less time in the gym, going through exercises, showing them exercises, much more time talking.
Yeah.
And sometimes that spills over. And that might be when I'm doing my objective assessment, not my subjective, because I'm just trying to get ahead of the game for that prescription bit at the end.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Like I say, it's going back to knowing that person, getting to know that person, isn't it? Again, probably more so than maybe they think what they're coming in for initially. And like I say, it's breaking down those barriers a little bit, isn't it, with them, and prioritizing maybe things that they're not even like sure of themselves. So no, that's good. Okay, so last question, just got a couple of minutes to round it up. So we had pre-submitted questions about what strategies or tools do you recommend for therapists to simplify exercise prescription while still ensuring effectiveness? So again, probably covered a little bit.
Yeah, it's a variation on a theme, that one really. There's, that there are tools and strategies that will be different answers as the correct answer for different people at different times. Just don't get pigeonholed or ring fenced into 1 or 2 strategies, because they normally don't work for everyone.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? As a clinician, it's finding what works for you, what you have accessible. Like I say, here at PhysiQuip, like I say, we like I say we support with equipment, but like I say, clinicians don't always have access to that. So it's finding what best strategy or other tools you have access to make it work, isn't it? For your patients. So okay, so last question. Do you routinely set intensity levels for exercises prescribed?
Yeah, I do actually. I do, and I use that rate of perceived exertion as a sort of option to use that, the score out of 10. Why that works quite nicely as well sometimes is you can we use it for pain, so most people are familiar with that type of 10-point scale. But similarly as well, you can easily cross over those. So if I was to say to someone, oh, you regularly weight train, so you understand what sort of working at 80% of your max would be, and they go, oh yeah, I know to do that. Okay, take out resistance levels and call it effort instead. So your 80% max is 80% effort. Most of them then sort of go, oh yeah, I get that. That makes sense now. Or within session, sometimes I'm getting them to try, I've gone back to this, it makes it sound like everybody gets a squat, but let's say they're doing squats. I might go, right, I want you to do that as hard as you can for the next 15 seconds. Okay, that's a 10.
Yeah.
Now I want you to do it really slow, really easy, as if you could do it all day. That's a 1. Does that make sense? Yeah. Could you now gauge what a 3, 4, 5, 6? Yeah, I would. Okay, cool. So that's how we're going to do it. And I just think sometimes when you've given less exercise and you just go, so I would often, when I went through the third point of the ways to progress the same exercise, my plan to someone, if I'm not going to see them, say, for 4 weeks, could be in week 1, I want your exercises to be this often, this many, but never more than 4 out of 10. And if that's okay for your pain levels and you're finding it okay, in week 2, we're going to go to 5 or 6. In week 3, 6 or 7. And in week 4, 8 out of 10 max. But you can use any of these types of ways, faster, slower, harder, heavier, more, whatever, change your rest periods. I don't mind which ones of those you choose, as long as you start meeting those intensity parameters. And then that also takes away that human variation of people get tired, people get fatigued, people can't be bothered some days, they're full of energy other days. 5 out of 10 will always be 5 out of 10. It'll be subjective to what's going on in their day and their lives, and they can manage it. And what you can do then is marry the two. So what I do sometimes, Ben Cormack does a really good job of explaining this as well, is they got 2 parameters to work off me, both out of 10, pain and reps. So I never want your pain to be more than 4 to 6 out of 10 on any exercise. And I never want your effort to be below 5 and above 7. So I might say like 6 and 6 is your number for this block. So pain sick, no more than 6 out of 10 anytime you're doing exercises or after, and intensity never more than 6. They suddenly go, get that, that makes sense. Next block, we might be 4 and 8, 3 and 9, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we play around with the 2 10-point scales, which works out quite nicely.
Yeah, no, great, thank you. So yeah, I think Mike, we've covered all those questions, and like I say, your presentation was full of bits of information and knowledge as well that a few people were asking about. So that's great. Yeah, if we haven't got around to some of the questions, or if you want us to expand on them, Mike has said that yeah, on the follow-up we can put some contact details in there if there's anything that wants to be expanded on or clarified. More than happy with that. Harry's commented saying what a great webinar. So yeah, I agree, Mike. It was full of great information there. So yes, what we'll do is we will follow up this webinar with sending out the recording to everyone. We also will be submitting a survey, so let us know any thoughts on that as well. Thank you, Mike, so much for presenting for us today. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. So no, it's been great. Obviously, yeah, if we will cover bits of contact details, like I said, for Mike, and other bits of yeah, resources that we've mentioned. If there's anything else that you want to contact us at PhysEquip and find out anything more about what we do and our education and bits of things, then again, please feel free to reach out. So thank you so much again, Mike. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. And yes, thank you again. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Real, thanks everyone.